Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
Spoke it into existence. Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Brandstetter, founder and podcast producer at Max Podcasting. And you can email me at max@maxpodcasting.com to save time with your high-quality podcast. This is episode 2 plus 9 equals 4. Ignore the math. 294. And today's guest is Hilah Stahl, the co-founder and CEO of Spoak. That's Spoak spelled S-P-O-A-K, which I realize as I'm speaking, it is very hard to spell things as you're talking into a mic. It just trips up your head. Anyway, Spoak is an incredibly cool online interior design platform that makes interior design easier, faster, more fun than ever. Groundbreaking, category-defining technology. And in this episode, we talk everything from how in the world Hilah went from some very interesting reality TV shows to an interior design platform, how to approach your target market when it might actually be made up of a subset of different types of sectors within your target audience. That rolls off the tongue. And everything from loading the dishwasher masterfully to the secret to making tasty maple syrup. It is Hilah. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Hilah Stahl, co-founder and CEO of Spoak, one of the most spoke-tastic companies, as is broadly known. No, one of the coolest, most creative companies have come about. Super cool interior design tool, platform, whatever you prefer. Hilah, thank you so much for joining. So excited to chat with you. How you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I actually saw that you started the business September 2018. Is that date still accurate?
Wow, that's good research. You're a good sleuth. Yeah, so that's literally when I applied for, to be a C Corp. The actual business launched months after that. Early 2019 actually was the very first version of the business. The version of the business that is, we pivoted about a year in. So the version of the business you now know was in actually March 1st of 2020. So right before chaos reigned.
Exactly. Impeccable timing. Well,
exactly.
Well, the initial filing date, September 2018. This podcast, we launched our first episodes in August 2018. So
oh my gosh.
This just totally timed up.
We're the same age. We'd be the same grade in school.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, we're growing up before our eyes.
Exactly.
So wonderful, wild, and bespoke timing there. But before we get to the Spoak journey further, I saw that one of your roles, which I'm not sure if it was full-time or internship, you were a production coordinator for TLC International.
Can you share
what that actually was, what shows, what that looked like?
Yeah, it was both actually a summer internship and then was a full-time job right when I got out of school. Basically, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my career when I left college and knew I wanted to do something creative, but something in business, and I hadn't quite figured out what that meant yet. Obviously, planting early seeds for what would become Spoak, but then at the time, I thought maybe media was where I ought to be. So anyway, long story short, I applied for jobs at the Discovery Channel. I got hired as a production assistant / coordinator for TLC International. TLC, it's the same TLC here, just obviously for the international audience. It was a riot. I was there when they were producing Honey Boo Boo and My Strange Addiction and all of these. It was both very fascinating and I think on paper very cool, but in reality, it was honestly it was a pretty depressing job, right? You're uncovering, it didn't sit well with me to sort of display such, I don't know, we had this one show called oh my God, I can't even remember what it was called, but it was about people with body anomalies, things that were distorted or bizarre, bumps, tumors, etc. And I just felt so morally conflicted that we were like making entertainment out of it. But I think a lot of, friends of mine were like, "Oh my God, the job is so cool." Anyway, long story short, I could only really stomach it for about 10 months and then I quit with no other job. I was just like, I gotta I gotta do something else. I found it very sad.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that. I mean, those are it's kind of in like a strange part of TV or now the streaming channels where those different types of reality shows like that, it's almost like the more obscure, the more listeners you'll I mean the more of an audience you have. Like there's people that will watch anything, and then
Yes.
there's people that get a really weird entertainment out of watching like some kind of, I don't know, we'll call them outside the box reality shows. But you hit some all timers there.
I know. I think the other thing too for me with reality television is like there's nothing wrong with things that are like funny or entertaining. I think the key thing for me is that the talent is in on the joke or in on the entertainment. It feels a little bit sad when they are not. And I felt that way
Yeah.
a little bit.
Oh, I'm totally with you. So, content aside,
Yeah.
what did you actually do in that role? Like, what does it look like? Is it PC, if they call it?
It is PC. So basically what would happen is production companies. So what I didn't realize is like I didn't know this going into the media world, but production companies are the ones that actually like commission the pilots for these shows. So they film, come up with them, and then they send the pilots. At the time it was still DVDs. I'm really like aging my CDs.
Ooh,
I'm aging myself.
even Blu-rays maybe.
Exactly. They would send sort of these pilots to my boss, who was the head of basically content at TLC. And he would have me like watch all of the pitches and decide which shows were interesting to move forward with. That was like maybe 33% of my job. The other 33% was honestly, frankly, a lot of like business operations, like budgeting, reporting, updates to the rest of the team. And then the other 33% was for the shows we did have greenlit and in production. He and I reviewed cuts together. So like the production company would send us episodes, we'd take detailed notes, send them back, and we probably did that two or three times per episode. So we'd comment on everything from like music to plot line to like actual takes. And for the show I was just telling you about, like those in particular with like physical issues, I don't know what to call it. The TLC would actually like sponsor a surgery. Like the episode was like, here is my issue, and then medically let's take care of it, and now like look at how amazing my life is post operation. That was sort of like the storyline. And so we actually had to like watch the surgery, and on the show like while I was kind of taking these notes, and I'm a really squeamish person, so that was another reason why the job was very difficult for me. I was sort of like, hey, in this view you have to show the like open heart surgery from a different angle, and was like, I can't believe I'm watching this. So yeah, I had a difficult time, but I think for some people it's like the dream job.
So let's get from squeamish to interior design, which is not
Yeah,
squeamish at
let's
all.
do it.
So pretty much the same thing you were doing at TLC. No, just kidding. At what point in your life did this passion for interior design come up about? A boot, as they would say in Canada.
Exactly, which is, I mean, I'm from Minnesota, it's not far. I mean, I had mentioned even in college, I knew that I was trying to find a career path that married creativity with business somewhere. I was always a creative person, I always like loved the arts and crafts, and I was just sort of trying to like figure out how to turn that. But I was an econ major, right? So it was just sort of like trying to find what felt like an impossible combination. I refused to believe that like creativity was for hobbies and work was for work. I really wanted to find something that married the two. I didn't yet know I loved interior design because quite honestly, I had never actually designed I mean, I was a college kid. I had like, yeah, I like liked decorating my dorm room, but beyond that, I didn't really know what that meant. From TLC, I got a job at a startup that was a media and video company that liked that I had media background, but I was basically like a Jane of all trades. I was one of the first employees who wasn't an engineer, and I just basically like ran around helping the founding team. And in that process, while yes, video was the reason I got the job from Discovery, it ended up pivoting me toward like a tech environment, and I really loved working on basically technology that was suited toward like in which building the technology required creativity, right? Required was either for creatives or was a creative job by nature. that led me into product management, which brought me, after that job, I went to Guilt Group, which was like again, aging myself here, like a flash sale site from the early aughts.
Yeah. No, no, guilt. Yeah, that's a
You know
huge name.
Guilt? Okay, good, great.
Yeah, I feel a little guilty about it, but
Your puns are amazing. And then from Guilt, I went to
sorry.
Bonobos, which I challenge you to make a pun for because I don't think you can. And then basically, long story short, when I was at Bonobos, at this point, I'm in my late 20s, and I moved in with, he's not my husband, but at the time he was my boyfriend. We moved in together in the city. And it was really, that was actually my first time really decorating a place. It was a two salary, one bedroom apartment in New York, which was the first time I basically wasn't still living in like a tiny dorm room-esque apartment with my girlfriends. And I had my style and he had his. We both had furniture from our prior apartments. And it was like really the first time I was challenged creatively to decorate a space. And in so doing, honestly fell in love with it. To be fair, that's interior decorating and not interior design. But I absolutely loved it and felt, and that's actually where the idea for Spoke started. I was trying so hard to do it myself. And I felt like there was just this enormous swath of companies that were focused on the inspiration phase of interior design, right? Pinterest, Instagram. And then basically, as soon as you figured out what ideas you like, they all stopped being helpful. They were sort of like, okay, good luck. You're on your own now. You like all these Pinterest photos, but like Godspeed in actually implementing any of your own ideas. And I felt like that lack of software was really profound and really frustrating, not just for me, but then I started doing research and felt like pros also had a really difficult time. I mean, short of like Photoshop, SketchUp, AutoCAD, all of which have a massively high barrier to entry, both financially and logistically. Like they require training and are very complicated to learn. I felt like there was a massive opportunity somewhere in the middle for, honestly, similar to what Canva did for graphic design, but for interior design. And I had been in software at that point for almost 10 years. And so I called a friend of mine and we said, let's do it.
That Bonobos brand always monkeying around.
Oh my God, you managed it. I'm so proud of you. That was really impressive.
And I apologize. I didn't hear anything you said the past 10 minutes because I've been thinking of no, I'm just
Of a
kidding.
pun. It's like, oh
Yeah,
no, don't
exactly.
make me
So
repeat myself.
throw any brand at me. No, no, that's a wonderful story. No, I just felt up to the challenge there, so thank you for that. But it's a really like organic way of discovering a problem and discovering a business idea, which is like one of my favorite things to hear talking to fellow founders, entrepreneurs out there. You had the knowledge of the software space. It's one thing to like be familiar with software versus create software in like kind of a totally untapped space. Like what was it like breaking into that in the interior design / decorating?
It was really hard. I mean, to be fair, I understood generally how to build software, but that is a really vague and kind of hand wavy concept. Like it varies so much between company to company. All I really understood was like the basic tenets of building software, which is like, like the whole concept of like iteration, right? Coming up with an MVP that is like pretty low effort to build, 80% of the value with 20% of the work type of mindset. And we just basically tried to apply. So my co-founder John worked with me at Guild. He was the head of engineering there, and I was the product manager there. So we were obviously colleagues in a lot of different ways. We became very close friends. And I remember when I left Guild to work at Bonobos, he was like, "I hope we meet. I hope we work together again someday." And I was like, "Don't worry, John. One day we're going to start a company together." And then he was like, "Okay, you call me when you have an idea." And then a couple years later, actually at my wedding in 2018, in July of 2018, he was at my wedding, and I was like, "Hey, I have a company idea for you." And he was like, "Hilah, not at your wedding. We'll talk about this some other
Wait,
time."
what point of the wedding was this?
On the dance floor, actually, I came up to him and I was like, "Do you have a minute?" He was like, "We're not doing this."
Wow, that's one of the best business partner courting stories I've ever heard.
I called him about a month later and was like, "Okay, do you have a minute now?" And then he was very excited, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll work on it part time while I kind of decide if I want to do this." And 2 days later, he quit his job. So it was a really fun story. But anyway, yeah, going back to your original question, how did we like extrapolate that? We basically just tried to apply those same core principles to this. It was kind of like treating it like any challenge, right? How do you take a problem, you want to solve with technology, come up with a very basic version of the technology that will at least answer your first question, then build what will answer your second question, and just keep doing this sequentially until all of your core questions are answered. I mean, as I mentioned, we actually launched the wrong business the first time, and then slowly answered enough questions to realize that and pivoted about a year in.
I like that sequential by questions sequentially. Regis Philbin would be proud. But no, it's a really good way to go about it. Like at the time of this recording, we recently had on co-founder of Gooder Sunglasses, Stephen Leese, and he's also not so much anymore, but he still does. He's like an ultra distance runner and did like 100-miler race through Zion, like crazy stuff like that. And I'm like, how in the world do you get, like it's enough to worry about like a 5K or 10K or half
Yeah,
a full marathon,
yeah.
like how do you do something crazy like that? And he's like, any runner will tell you the same thing. Like you don't think about the full thing. You think about
One
one
step
foot
at
in
a
front
time.
of the next.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. There
Yeah.
you go.
I
You know
got
it.
great advice. I mean, I'm not a runner, so I don't know it. But from a business perspective, I do. I mean, I got great advice when I was founding the company, which was like, don't ever look at the Everest in front of you. Just put one foot in front of the other. And that's like set up your email alias and figure out what the company's going to be. Just don't let yourself get tripped up with with all it's going to take. I think even then, if I knew what the 5 years it's been since have had in store for me, I probably would have been overwhelmed. But naivety is also a blessing.
Yeah, it definitely is. On that note, what's something that like early on in forming the company that did, like in hindsight, it did trip you up for a while, but you were able to get it resolved?
Okay, so always from the beginning, the core problem we were trying to solve was this, like, it's really hard to decorate. It's really hard to take an idea and actually implement it. When we were first starting, we had decided we wanted to bootstrap. So we sort of were trying to answer those first couple questions, as I mentioned, but also do it in such a way where we could start charging right away, right? Because we needed revenue to operate. And the way we thought was the best way to accomplish both at the same time was basically to launch like a very hands-on e-design service in which basically I was designing for clients who paid us a monthly subscription fee. And in so doing, we were obviously taking in revenue, but using that experience of me designing for a modern client on a budget to determine what products we were going to have to build when we wanted to flip the switch and basically give the keys to the people who wanted to do the decorating themselves and have their own software. But at the time, we thought, hey, listen, like when we launched the business, we didn't launch it thinking eventually we would sunset it. We launched it thinking this will tell us a lot, we'll get a lot of revenue or we'll get enough revenue to operate, and then we'll add software supplementally to it later. But once we started running it, we were like, why is it so hard to find clients? Like, why is nobody signing up? Why is everyone so frustrated with this process? Why is like it was just friction at every point. And I remember at one point we had these like waves where we'd get a couple signups a day and then we wouldn't for a few days and then we'd have a great week and then we wouldn't. And John and I were desperate to try and find some rhyme or reason behind why it was so intermittent and variable. And so we had these like I had French doors at my apartment at the time. I was actually living in Germany at the time and my co-founder's in Ireland. So he was like in Germany with me. And we had like all of these pieces of paper with a timeline on this big glass window I had. It was literally a beautiful mind in my apartment. And we were like trying to find a pattern anywhere. Until eventually he looked at me and he was like, maybe the pattern is just that it's not working. Like maybe there is no pattern and this is just a pretty terrible business model. And that, I mean, that was the first sign in what ended up being like a 2 or 3 month painful process in which we realized we had to sunset that version of the business and launch the software as soon as possible.
So, just out of curiosity, what part of Germany were you in, by the way?
I was in Berlin.
Okay, that's cool. That's a fun city. Lots to do there.
It is.
Tiny city. Nobody lives there. It's
Yeah,
like not much to
exactly.
do.
Very rural.
Yeah, exactly. That would definitely be how I describe Berlin. No,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's a good aha moment. Like, and a good lesson is like sometimes we just need to drop this. Like, if we're
Yeah.
spending so much time trying to make this make sense,
I
it
think
doesn't
it's
make
really
sense.
confusing because you hear a lot as a founder that like it's all about perseverance and determination and the companies that succeed are the ones that don't give up. But I think it's a very nuanced, but it's a very clear definition between deciding something doesn't work and giving up, right? Those are two, they're very distinct, but it's very hard to tell what the difference is when you're still in the very beginning. It feels like abandoning one business model to go to another one is in some ways some kind of, I don't know, surrender in a way that doesn't feel good at the time. And so I was like, no, it's just perseverance. I just have to make it work, right? And so it was trying to kind of like disentangle my mental relationship to what was happening from what was happening before my eyes statistically was a complicated thing that first year.
So then what happened in a positive light was the software. So if for anybody who's not familiar with Spoak, can you share like what your main differentiator is versus like something else somebody could see? I cannot talk. Let me just start over. Hi, I'm Max. No, some versus anything else out there where somebody could get their design juices flowing.
Yeah, I think there are two key differentiators. The first is that we're basically a one-stop shop. So everything you need to do, basically from inspiration through to actual physical furniture arriving, you can do with Spoke. So we have visualization software, floor planning, but we also have budgeting, organization, order tracking, all in one place and all interconnected in a project. So when you're working on a visualization and you add, a parachute sheets to your bed, those sheets get added to your project and then you can add them to your budget. And it's like these are all just clicks basically away from one another. I think the other key differentiator is the ease of use, right? We focus on it being a web app instead of like a standalone desktop app or mobile app that you had to download. It's fast, it's easy to use, no other design experience required. Again, very similar to the value prop of Canva in that way, but for interior design. I think the other thing is many other design softwares out there, Photoshop, SketchUp, and AutoCAD included, are horizontal design solutions, meaning like they cater to people in almost every industry, or not every industry, but every industry that might need the software, right? Like AutoCAD is for architects and furniture designers, and Photoshop is for graphic designers and photographers and artists, etc. By focusing on a vertical solution, like by saying early on, we are only going to be for interior design, it has allowed us to put just an enormous amount of effort into things that I think those other companies would deem really small or insignificant. Like in a one click, you can wallpaper a wall with Spoke, or like you can, in one click, you can like pick your tiling and it applies to the whole floor. Like there are just these kind of like micro interactions, these mini flows that can be really niche to the interior design industry because we've decided that we are only for interior design and ease of use is basically our primary KPI. So that's the long and short of it, I think. Obviously there are a couple more, but I think that would be how I would tell anybody listening.
I appreciate that. What is something that you've heard, like a tweak you'd made to the software that you like pretty quickly started getting really good feedback from users about that update?
Two things. The first was we have one click background removal on images. So when you like add a product to the canvas, you can just click one button and the background is like smartly removed. So no like magic
Ooh,
lasso
that's
or
nice.
anything.
That
Yeah.
was like satisfying to hear about.
Yeah, it is. It is almost as satisfying to hear about as it is to see visually.
Almost.
The other one is that we don't limit our product catalog. A lot of the other like out of the box solutions kind of only work with certain brands in which, for example, they have like affiliate relationships with or they have the 3D models for. We basically allow people to put a product in from anywhere on the internet, like as long as it has a photo and a name and a price, you can add it to the system. So the other cool thing about that is that our product database is like collaborative, right? Every designer who's ever worked on a project in Spoke is adding their own products and now they're there for you to discover. So it means it's sort of this like pre-filtered awesome catalog of products from around the internet, but you can add anything from anywhere, both of which have been obviously hugely sticky for us.
Yeah. Oh, not enough people use the term sticky in that light. That's perfect. But I think the ease of use is clear. It's like something is a big focus for you and the team to build on. And it makes sense. Like I think being in a space where your audience is so visually and design focused, like that ease needs to be there. Like if you're tripping people up by what it takes to remove a background or like what it takes to integrate like other items, things like that, then it's just not going to work. So I appreciate the commitment there.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is like by nature of actually charging for the product from the beginning and for everyone, like there is no free tier, which obviously has its huge downsides. But one of the great upsides about it is that our like business model and our customer was always or have always been super clear. Like as long as the people paying us are happy, everybody wins. They get what they want out of the
Yeah.
tool. We get obviously our revenue stream. Whereas I think with other businesses where, you're kind of monetizing your free users by ads or by affiliate revenue, like we only really make money from the subscription fees. And so our only job is to keep our user happy. We don't favor certain brands, we don't, and that keeps it. I think that just basically means as long as we are making it easy to be creative, like we're not limiting the products you can use or how you can use them, theoretically both we and all of our designers should win.
Yeah, I actually was curious about that side as well as like your users. Like you have a really interesting audience, it appears, because there's kind of like multiple subsets of it. Like you have like the hardcore like professional interior designers, like that's an entire industry in itself. You have the category of like hobbyists, and I'm sure there's more on top of that. How do you break down who your customers are, and like how does that, sorry, two questions. How do you kind of split that from your view of who your main audience is, and then how does that impact like how you update and develop the software that you share with them?
Internally, we talk about four basically key personas of our market. We've got the DIYer, who's like basically just designing and renovating their own house. We have the hobbyist, who is someone who may have already finished their home project but doesn't want to stop designing. So maybe they want to do it for fun, or they're starting to kind of casually maybe decorate for friends and family. We have a part-time designer. These are people who are like moonlighting or freelancing or basically self-employed. And then we have professional interior designers who are obviously also potentially self-employed, but might also work at a firm or work at with a brand, right? Like Anthropology has professional interior designers who use Spoak as a platform. So
don't make me make an anthropology pun too.
I promise I won't,
I'm
because
out.
I know you can is the scary thing. I no longer am going to challenge you.
Scary is a good word.
At any given time in our history, we've had to really push ourselves to focus on which persona we're building for at the time. Obviously, there are more DIYers and hobbyists in the world than there are professional interior designers. So when we were starting, that's where we focused. But over time, we built out more and more sophisticated features and, tried to get more and more professional interior designers. And now we're sort of upping the ante or kind of onto the next echelon, which are brands. Like, how do we support brands looking to either design themselves or offer the software on their own website or get in front of the designers using the tooling?
We kind of keep coming back to users, and one of the things that's been so impressive about your company is like the fact that like you've been able to have like great growth as far as user and revenue goes, which obviously, especially for a software business, is super important, but important for any business. Looking back a year, and I know it's still, all things considered, early days of your journey, but looking back, what would you say is like the number one way that you've been able to grow your user base?
I feel like I ought to give a shout out to our VP of Growth, Eastland, who has educated me very thoroughly on the concept of demand capture and demand creation, right? So, like at any time when it comes to our marketing and growth strategy, we're trying to basically accomplish flywheels in both those categories. So, how do we're in a lot of ways, we're sort of a category definer, right? Like we are sort of the first everyday person, easy to use interior design software, really, that's out there. Like you have to create the demand when people don't know that a company like yours even exists. So there's demand creation. How do you get people to even know you exist or that something like your software is even possible? And then there's the demand capture for the people who are looking for a tool like yours. How do you find them where they are? Right? For demand creation, it's been for us primarily social media, right? How do you like get exposed to new cool things, right? You either advertise on social media or you create viral content in order to basically get so people can know who you are or that something like you even exists. For demand capture, it's been frankly SEO, right? How do people who are Googling bedroom layout planner, how do we make sure we show up where they are?
Perfect. And then you made this joke before we started. I didn't, but it could be people Googling bathroom stall as well.
Like, oh my God, yeah.
Stall as in,
exactly.
As in stall.
Max asked me how to pronounce my last name. I said stall, like bathroom stall, and he was pretty mortified. So yeah, someone might be Googling how to design a bathroom stall, and then I would really hope Spoak shows up for them.
Yeah, exactly. And then Spoak, where'd the name come from?
Spoke is a portmanteau of bespoke and the acronym OAK for one of a kind.
Oh, okay. I was not going to guess that. I had a feeling it was bespoke. No way I was guessing the second part.
Yeah, no, I mean, it also has great SEO, right? I wanted to make sure it was a made up word, or at least made up spelling, so that we weren't competing with anything else you might be Googling.
You really spoke it into existence.
I really did. And you know what else? Our blog is called Spoken Word, Well Spoken. We've got all kinds of puns internally across the board.
There's a lot you can do with that. A lot of
Yeah,
bicycle wheel analogies as well, if you want to go down
exactly.
that road. But
Exactly. Literally this morning in all hands, I called us the spoke of the wheel. Like it never ends.
yeah, well, congrats, and I'm sorry. All right. It never ends. That's what readers of the Podcasting to the Max newsletter think. Every issue I send out, pretty much. No, it is really short and sweet every Thursday. And it is where podcasting meets entrepreneurship in the worst puns, even worse than this episode. If that's possible to have puns worse than those in this episode, then you can find them in the Podcasting to the Max newsletter. And you can sign up for that at maxpodcasting.com/newsletter. That is maxpodcasting.com/newsletter. And then not only will you run wild, but you will also pun wild. I just dropped the mic. That's what that sound was. All right, we are in dire need of a switch up. Let's switch it up a bit. Let's we'll wrap up with a couple kind of segments full of puns. No, segments that are corny, like these don't have to tie back to your business, but totally up
Love
to you
it.
if you want. This first one's called The Unusual. So this is kind of about you, personality, pet peeves, quirks, weird talents. What is a quirk? Somebody, your husband, team, friends, family, somebody calls you out for that's a little quirky, but it's who you are.
I am a huge movie quoter, and particularly like really stupid slapstick comedy movies, but I like think in movie and TV show quotes. And if my husband was here, he would also tell you that I can't cut or draw or do anything in a straight line. Like leveling is not my jam.
Yeah, it's pretty important for leveling. Favorite movie line of all time?
Oh my God. You should have warned me you were going to ask me this question because now I'm on the
Well,
spot
I
and
didn't
I
know
feel
until about 4 seconds ago.
That's really fair. That's really fair. Something I've been saying a lot recently, and I can't believe I'm about to say it, is the line that Stanley Tucci says in The Devil Wears Prada, where he screams to the whole office, "Gird your loins!" And that is something that's a gif I send around a lot. Again, aging myself. I'm a millennial. I send gifs in the workplace.
Yeah.
I have my flaws.
It's sad that now us as millennials have to say that we're aging ourselves. Like, where did that come from?
Well, we're old now, so that's where it came from.
That's probably where it was. Yeah. Well, shout out Stanley Tucci for his Italy show as well.
Yeah, Stanley Tucci, if you're listening to this, we love you.
What about weird talents or party tricks? Like, what's something that you have a knack for, but it's literally just a minor thing around the house that doesn't have any impact on your business?
Okay, well, I'm incredible at loading the dishwasher. So,
Oh,
like, I'm like a Tetris dishwasher queen. I'm not generally a big bragger, but I can fit more dishes in a dishwasher than like I would say 80% of people.
I have to say, I take pride in that as well. I'm sure I'm way slower than you, but
Oh no, I didn't say I'm fast. I can fit.
oh,
I can fit a lot of stuff. I'm not fast. No.
yeah. No, I like doing it with like a full load every time.
Yeah,
But
same.
my wife Dana is big on like this isn't gonna fit. Like this isn't.
I
gonna
know.
work.
Sometimes my husband has loaded the dishwasher, and then he's like, "This is all that fit," and I look at it, and I'm like, "No, watch me." And I will like unload and reload it like it's like a game of Tetris. So that's a big one. I know a lot of Eminem lyrics. Like if you put on an Eminem song, there's like a more than decent chance I know the words, which is it's a long and windy road
I
to
think
how I
that
got here.
speaks to our age.
Yeah, exactly.
I would guess two of the most common are that you know the most well are "Lose Yourself" and "Without Me."
I know them both, yeah, but I also like there are some like pretty hardcore like Marshall Mathers LPs that I also know.
Like yeah, we could go down a dark path.
Yeah, that's
Dark,
maybe
twisted path if you want
that's
there.
maybe an episode for another time.
Maybe for next one. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. We'll put a double explicit rating on that one.
exactly.
And then what's a pet peeve you have besides dishwashers that are pretty empty? What's something that grinds your gears a little bit?
Do you know what misophonia is?
No, that it sounds like a phobia, but it's not even a phobia. What
It's
is it?
not a phobia. It's basically like people who it's neurological, but basically you're like predisposed to being like highly irritated by certain sounds. I have
Oh,
it. Okay. So like to people who are like tapping or chewing with their mouth open or just like any kind of like repetitive and slightly jarring sound is like really difficult for me. I really like remote working has been such a blessing for me because like sitting next to people who are eating in offices or clicking away on their keyboard was like very very difficult for me to stomach.
yeah, that's really good one. I didn't know there was a name for it, but yeah, like when you think about it, I feel like things that people are annoyed by the most often, like it really comes down to sounds.
Yeah, I think so. Sounds and rudeness, right? Like people
Right.
just like a lack of just basic graciousness.
Yeah, or rude sounds, even worse.
Yeah, or that. The holy grail, really, of pet peeves.
Well, shout out Monty Python and shout out Marshall Mathers. Let us Slim Shady our way to some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
Let's do it. Yeah, I hope I can keep up. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm bracing myself.
All right, let's get wild. Recite the second verse of "Lose Your." No, I'm just kidding.
No, I was
No,
like,
I'm not
oh
gonna. Not gonna
no.
make you do it. Yeah, it's gonna be 6-minute freestyle. No, let's get to. I saw that actually. Now that you know, I fully stalked you in preparation for this.
Hmm.
I can share that I saw that you studied abroad in Barcelona as
I
well.
did.
And so at the time of this recording, pretty soon after this, my wife Dana and I are going on a trip. We're super excited to Spain and Portugal, and the first stop we're going to is Barca. So with that in mind, we obviously are going to do Sagrada Familia, Park Güell, going to hit up some tapas places, La Rambla. Ramblas? I should know by then. Any kind of like hidden gem of either a restaurant or a spot in town that you're like, most people don't do this, but you should do it.
Okay, well first I have an answer, but again, with the aging myself here, I studied abroad a really
You're very hard
long
on yourself.
I studied abroad a pretty long time ago. Like so I don't know if these places still exist, but in general, I know that the neighborhood I would tell you to walk through is the Gothic Quarter, Alborn. Okay, it's like right by the beach. Amazing. Greatest shops, little restaurants, etc. There is also, and now I'm kicking myself because I can't remember. Basically, okay, I started a business and then I became a mom. There was like 4 years between those two events. But now my brain was basically like, hey, any details you don't need to know on a like day-to-day basis have exited the building. So like all of a sudden I used to have an incredible memory. I can't remember anymore like names of things or anything. But there is a tapas place. There exists a tapas place in Barcelona that you have to go to. The name of which I honestly cannot remember, but I will dig up and find and I will email it to you. And I'm so sorry for the
Thank
terrible
you.
answer to your
I'm
question.
sure. I'm sure if I just search tapas Barcelona, it will come up. So
Oh,
I'll be
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Thank you.
exactly. You should be fine. There's only one tapas place in Barcelona, so I'm sure you can't miss it.
Oh, so I'm reminded now of a recent conversation we had with some friends over dinner. Shout out Cody and Laney, where Dana called me out because every time, like, I don't think it's just me. I think it's anybody in general. You can't say tapas without it sounding like topless. So it's a very dangerous word. And
I'm looking for a topless
Barcelona's
restaurant.
just a topless city. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Can get into
Amazing.
a lot of trouble there. So you can
Yeah.
tell the pace of my rapid fire Q&A now. But thank you for that. What is something about going to Duke that most people would be surprised by?
Wow, that's a great one. I love to do. I think Duke is like the best place ever. I think Durham gets a bad rap. Durham as a city is like one of the coolest, most up and coming places in the country, in my opinion. Like incredible food, art, culture scene, highly underrated.
We'll recite some Bull Durham quotes next. So thank you for that. What is your favorite part about living in like the Hudson Valley area?
Okay, well, I would tell you how much I love this area, but but I feel like it's also like the world's best kept secret. So I'm also going to try to like underplay how amazing it is.
You
But
could
no,
also you could be the top reasons why you hate this area. Wink, wink.
yeah, exactly, exactly. No, I think for me in particular, I was always sort of drawn to nature, and I think I resisted that call for many years because I was an ambitious career woman and I thought working remote was not really a thing. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to have to live in a city and that'll be that. In that sense, COVID was such a huge blessing because I could really move anywhere I wanted. I mean, like and I all of these now like I've become kind of, my husband and I become kind of homesteaders in a way. Like we have chickens and I garden and we make our own maple syrup. And I actually had an investor tell me that he believes that my living here is a competitive advantage because where a lot of my peers are in these like high stress areas, I get to basically like leave a stressful meeting and go walk in the woods. And I believe that's very true.
Yeah, totally. No, that sounds so nice. And then last one, I plan this months in advance. What's the secret to making great maple syrup?
The burn, honestly, and okay, so basically, okay, do you want me to like go deep on this? I'm gonna try and like do this in a very, very
let's do it. Shout out Super Troopers. Let's get deep into syrup.
Okay, let's get super deep into maple syrup. Here's the deal. In the Northeast, at least, maple syrup season coincides with like the worst time of year, which is why I love it so much because like it's so basically you have to tap your maple trees when it's above freezing temps during the day, but below freezing temps at night, which in the Northeast is like February and March, okay? Like in the pits of winter when you are just so ready. Like holiday season's over, you're so ready for winter to be over. Although obviously like in the South it's much earlier. That's like November or December. But anyway, for us it's February and March. Anyway, every day you go and collect the sap. Reason number one we love maple syrup is because it forces you outside every day during a period of time where you could just as easily like never leave the house. The sap is actually not syrupy. This is like a myth. It's like water. It's like sugar water. It's like clear and highly viscous. It's not like sticky or syrupy. Anyway, then every week on Sunday we burn the syrup. We burn it outside on a fire for like the first 8 hours, like until it's kind of starting to darken. And then when all of the sap we've collected over that week is down to a manageable amount, like has burned down to a manageable amount, you take it off the fire and you bring it inside on the stove so you can like really manage it, like control the temperature, control the mixing, like the color and the thickness come down to those last hour or two on your stovetop.
Wow.
You're like, I really regret asking her onto this podcast.
No, I love it. It's you never know what a question can what answer it can turn into. But no, I appreciate the fine tune, chefing that you're doing.
The truth is, I mean, like I'm pretending like I know a lot. Literally, Max, we work on maple syrup for 2 months. We get like 4 mason jars of it by the end of a year. That's how much, like how hard it is and how little you get. And then we give it all away to our friends within like 2 weeks and then it's over.
Hey,
but it's so fun.
It's a true labor of love. Pretty sweet at that.
Whoa.
Hilah, thank you so much. First for complimenting my puns, but second for coming on this podcast and sharing your awesome Spoak Story. Me. Yeah, of course. Just absolutely love what you're doing. And I know if people want to learn more about Spoak, they can go to spoak.com, SPOAK.com, which now we know what it stands for. And the portmanteau. Am I saying that right? Portmanteau. It's like Toronto meets Atlanta.
Yeah.
Also, is there anywhere else, like if people want to connect with you online, where should they connect?
Well, you can always find me on LinkedIn and you can find me on Instagram, Hilah's Things, no weird dashes or punctuation. And Spoak is at SPOAK on Instagram.
Perfect. Spoken like a champion. And then last thing, final thoughts. Stage is yours. It could be words to live by or another movie quote or your second favorite tapas place in Barcelona. I couldn't resist. Whatever you want, just send us home here.
Okay, a quote that my executive coach says to me all the time is, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
And Spoak is mandatory as far as I'm concerned. Thank you so much, Hilah, for sharing and speaking to your wonderfully spoken Spoak journey and dealing with all the puns. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning in to another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to follow the Wild Business Growth Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, as well as subscribe to the Wild Business Growth Podcast on YouTube. On YouTube, that's actually the channel is at Max Brandstetter, spelled SPOAK. No, I'm just kidding. At Max Brandstetter. You can also find the Wild Business Growth Podcast on Good Pods, where there are good podcasts and podcast recommendations and people. And for any help with podcast production, you can learn more at maxpodcasting.com and sign up for the Podcasting to the Max newsletter. That is at maxpodcasting.com/newsletter. Until next time, let your business run wild. Bring on the bongos!